The first story, The Call from the Forest. On a cold, moonless autumn night, Khaled and his friends were deep in the forests of northern Europe on a camping trip. The forest was known for its eerie tales and mysterious legends, stories that lingered in the cold wind and among the towering trees. That evening, as they gathered around the crackling fire, they began to hear faint cries coming from deep within the woods. The voice sounded distant, almost like that of a woman calling out for help. Khaled, always the bold one, ignored the warnings of his friends. It could be someone in real trouble, he said, standing up with determination. Against their protests, he decided to investigate, convinced that someone was in need. His flashlight flickered as he ventured into the dense forest, the firelight from the camp fading behind him. The deeper he walked, the clearer the voice became. But there was something unsettling about it. The sound didn't seem to come from one direction, but echoed all around him. Each step forward filled him with a growing sense of dread, but Khaled pushed on, feeling an odd pull towards the source of the sound. Minutes passed as Khaled navigated through the dense underbrush. Suddenly, he found himself in an unnatural clearing. A perfect circle, surrounded by towering trees whose dark, gnarled branches seemed to close in above him, blocking out the sky. The air was heavy, unnaturally still. The light from his flashlight barely penetrated the oppressive darkness, and a deep, primal fear gnawed at the edge of his mind. It felt as though the forest itself was alive, watching him. As Khaled turned to retrace his steps, the air seemed to thicken around him. His eyes fell upon something that made his blood run cold. A corpse, old and withered, hanging from a tree. Its flesh was sunken and decayed, with empty, hollow eyes that stared into nothingness. But what terrified Khaled the most was that the voice, the same voice calling for help, was now coming from the lifeless body. The eerie cries echoed in his ears as if the voice was trapped within the rotting corpse, unable to leave. Khaled's heart pounded in his chest, and a wave of cold fear washed over him. He wanted to scream, to run, but his legs felt like they were anchored to the ground, frozen in place by an invisible force. It was as if the forest itself was holding him, refusing to let him go. Out of the darkness, a figure slowly emerged, an apparition of a woman, her face pale and lifeless, her eyes hollow and sorrowful. She drifted closer, her tattered white dress brushing against the ground as she whispered in a voice that was both mournful and chilling. "Don't leave us. Stay with us." Khaled's mind raced, terror consuming him. His breath came in short, panicked gasps. The woman's cold fingers reached for him, but before she could touch him, everything went black. The next thing Khaled knew, he was lying on the cold ground at the edge of the camp. The morning sun had begun to rise, casting long shadows across the forest. His friends found him there, unconscious but unharmed, though his face was pale and his eyes haunted by something they couldn't understand. He couldn't explain what had happened, how he had escaped, or if he had ever truly escaped at all. The memory of the woman's whisper and the corpse's voice remained with him, a terrifying mystery of the forest that he would never forget.